I love Mike Hanson Archives.
You ready to run?
This is Desi Mariah Andrews, and I love Hanson Archives and Waco Archives on YouTube.
And Mike Hanson Archives.
And Mark Hanson Archives. He forgot to tell me that, folks.
Oh, and I love Desi Andrews.
We got here somebody that we haven't seen in about 20 years. Is
Hello there.
Late
How
and
are
great, late and great
Good to see you.
George Humphrey.
Yes. Oh my goodness! I see who it is. Yes.
Tell us what you've been up to.
Oh my goodness! Isn't this a great day?
Yes.
It is amazing.
Tell us why you're here, hurry, because it's my Facebook.
My heart is heavy for the world, but my heart is also happy for the good people here. We need to get back to work, and we need to realize that this cure, it's not a cure, it's not about a virus, it's about political control. And we are free and sovereign, and we have the choice to either be slaves or to be free. I choose to be free, yes.
Well, guess what I did? I bought about $20,000 worth of editing equipment and hired some people to put all the tapes on for the last 25 years, and you're on there. So I want you to, and I'm gonna plug my YouTube channel.
Okay, great.
Mike Hanson
Of course,
Archives,
of course.
Hanson Archives, and Waco
I
Archives.
didn't recognize you at the start.
Okay, so I need you to say, this is George Humphrey, and I love Mike Hanson Archives.
This is George Humphrey, and this guy is awesome. Mike Hanson, the Mike Hanson Archives. Check it out.
You're on there. We just put about 3 tapes of you on there. And you had slick black hair then.
Now it's all dyed.
All right. God bless y'all. We'll see you in a minute.
A synergistic effect that will spread across the nation so that we will be able to get this traitor out of there, and when the next traitor steps in, he'll be mindful that the American public, the sleeping giant, the silent majority, is willing and able to stand up against this type of treason.
I think you said a key phrase there, the silent majority. Basically, roughly between 5 and 10% of the eligible voting population ever votes in any types of elections. I think that's a pathetic state of affairs. I got a guy I work for now. He did 3 tours in Vietnam. What are we saying to a man that did 3 tours in Vietnam when only maybe on a good day 8 to 10% of it's managed to get out to the polls? I think it's pretty doggone pathetic. Men have died to give you that right to vote, and women have died to give you that right to vote. And if you don't exercise it, I'm sorry, I think that's borderline treason.
I would agree with you, Steve, and more importantly, or not more importantly for what you're saying, is the fact that they have destroyed your morale out there. They've made you feel small and insignificant. That's because they're scared of the mass. Sure, the mass of people is just like the establishment, good ones, bad ones. The difference is there's not that incentive to sell people out. Now, there's 3 traitors, 4 traitors, quite a few agents up there. There's a CIA drug runner, George W. Bush. Yeah, he headed up the CIA in the 70s. But, and by the way, I've brought you documentaries and several books on those facts by ex-CIA agents. A lot of them have been killed. Terrorism fears spur training. Urban teams are making plans to counter biological attack, but measures feared inadequate. Why don't you tell them about how they call us kooks and about the $4.6 billion to buy off our politicians? Again, in about 5-6 minutes, you're going to see the chief tell you about that.
Yeah, they talked about, I remember reading this article yesterday. I'm glad you brought it in. I brought it in as well, just in case. One of the guy, assistant fire chief in San Antonio, which I think is interesting that we brought up San Antonio, and his quote is, "You have a lot of kooks out there." And here I think we see a perfect example of create a problem and offer a solution. Part of what's going on here is $4.6 billion being spent by the Department of Defense.
To create a police state.
That's right, to
But
prepare.
it's for your best interest.
Oh, no. It's to prepare for the unthinkable within 6 years. Many officials believe biological chemical terrorism is not a matter of if, but when.
Well, you know, a lot of people sit there and ask, Alex, why for the last month and a half have I been showing this popular mechanics? Well, I brought in the MK Ultra 1979 declassified documents where the federal government used chemical and biologicals in subways in San Francisco and the harbors to kill people to see what it would do. That's what they think of you out there. They used our soldiers in atomic testing. They all got cancer. Now let's talk about something more important here. They're telling you about, in this very same article from this Sunday's Metro and State, They're sitting there telling you that biological attack is imminent. Imminent. It's going to happen. In fact, the quote from the Statesman is, it's not a question of will it happen, but when it happens. Who's attacked America with chemical and biologicals? The Pentagon, 1950 and 1966. That's what they've declassified partially. You're going to see excerpts from these articles. You're going to see excerpts from the San Antonio Express News, where they talk about black helicopters, where they talk about elite, deadly, super secret Delta Force teams coming in and firing weapons. Commandos in Charlotte flew helicopters at treetop level over a middle-class, predominantly African-American neighborhood near a warehouse district. Delta Force caused $100,000 in property damage resulting from an explosion.
Wait, Delta Force? There's no such thing. I've never heard Tom Brokaw talk about Delta Force.
Well, they're only supposed to take care of terrorists outside the country, and they build special models of where they're going to be attacking. They kill. They don't say.
Well, now, Alex, I've never heard Tom Brokaw talk about things like that.
In a minute, we're going to hear the police chief talk about it, how they didn't want to have bullets being fired into restaurants like happened in Miami.
But does he wear $3,000 suits and $400 ties?
No.
What kind of credibility
and all we
could he
have is a
possibly
VHS
have?
camera, you know.
Yeah, well.
Hey, but Austin, the important part is
it's coming here.
They threw them out because they set fires, blew up buildings inside town, caused injuries, and shot up restaurants with people in them.
Stray bullets. Oh, but they were just ceramic bullets. They weren't real
They're
bullets.
just glass. Yeah. Let me shoot you with a ceramic bullet. I mean, let your wife take a plate and hit you upside the head.
Right. Well, how about a diaper bag?
Yeah, these won't go through their armored plating. All they care about is their Kevlar. It'll go right through your shirt and shatter when it hits your bone and is more deadly. In fact, Continental soldiers fighting against the British used glass bullets because they're so deadly.
You know, I should have told you. I should have brought it. I don't know if I'm willing to say who, but somebody provided me with a little catalog of a civilian group. It's just a private, like a corporation.
They use sonic weapons that can make you vomit.
where they train SWAT teams and whatnot, and it's a house, and they're taught to storm the house and how to storm into bedrooms and take over the house and seize the weapons and that sort of thing. And that's the kind of training that's going on in both private and federal agencies are doing that type of training as well.
Well, you know, right here it says. In this Statesman article, it says that in June...
Yeah, it's right here. June.
Yeah, in June, federal trainers will brief City of Austin and Travis County Department directors, community commissioners, and city council members about the nature of the terrorism threat. Training will follow.
Think we'll be at that commissioner's
Training
court?
will follow in November. Yes, I think we should be there for that.
Yeah, no, right there. Judge Alshire and the other county commissioners and city council, I can all but assure you, Alex Jones and Steve Lane will be there pointing out the problems with this situation.
I just want to point out our camera lights aren't working. It's that camera, Steve. You're doing an excellent job.
Sorry.
No, Steve, I respect you. You're doing a much better job than me. I'm not sitting here telling you. No, but right here.
Give me time.
Right here, yeah, I've been on it, 3 years. Right here, we're sitting here looking at this, and it's all for terrorism. It's for these kooks. You know, the police chief talks about a San Antonio person that he works with closely that might have taken some money. We're going to see this. And it's funny how we hear they've got some San Antonio officials, how we're going to work with San Antonio. But you read the Express News from 5698. I got this from the police department down there. They don't want any part of the black helicopter training. In fact, before we get to this tape, let me first read this. This is from 5698. They've done 2 stories on it. And then no news here in Austin's done it, except for, I have to admit, KLBJ 590 did a 10-second report that the police chief and the mayor had thrown out Delta Force. Stormy past hurt Delta Force bid for San Antonio exercise. First came the loud whirling of helicopter blades, then booming explosions, followed by the crackle of small arms fire. Dazed and confused, frightened nearby residents of working-class homes awakened in the dead of night, tumbled from their beds, scrambled for shelter, and called for help. There's about 100 more quotes and documents. You're asking, why have I hate the mainstream media? Well, as far as I know, this isn't owned by Cox News Service and Cox Chambers, a CFR crony. And the paper wouldn't have written that. They write whatever they're told. They saw a leader figure, a police chief, a mayor stand up, so of course they parroted the truth. But in Austin, our mayor and our people currently, if they turn around, I will congratulate them, but I won't in this piece you're fixing to see. If they stand up to it, I will congratulate them. You see, everybody's a bunch of followers in this country. When are we going to stand up? When are we going to affect change? That's why I told Police Chief Philippus off the record, and he said some things off camera that I didn't believe after the interview. actually before the interview mostly, about what's been going on. It's much worse. But I said I would keep very confidential matters on that. But watch what you see on the tape. It's incredible. This is a career politician, police officer, but at least he cares about his people. This is incredible. We have got, Delta Force should not train here. Swarming helicopters, everything else. And you're going to see an important interview, very important interview, from KTSA 550 with former Delta Force Commander Steve Berry.
I want to make a quick point here. You know, Alex, when they do this training, if they do this training, they're not going to do it over in Westlake Hills.
Oh, no.
I can tell you that right now.
Oh, let me read here.
They're going to do this.
They do it in black communities.
I guarantee they're going to do this east of I-35 or in other areas that have traditionally been the not so affluent areas of Austin. I guarantee it. So if you're sitting at home thinking, well, this doesn't affect me, if you're in Westlake Hills, you're probably right. It's not going to happen in your neighborhood. You got nothing to worry about as usual.
Let me go back to an article. See, here's a little illustration I brought up. Can we get a close-up of this? A little illustration.
But typical the federal government to prey on the politically weak.
Yeah. Bombs, black copters, spill secret of CIA school. This is from Sunday, March 29, 1998. I read it every week. Why do I do it? It's not old news. You've been conditioned that if it's not new news, that you're not going to talk about it. So, see, that conditions you to never stand up, to never build up steam, because, oh, that's old news. No, we have to talk about this. The Statesman soft soaks and tells you how wonderful the CIA bases are, how wonderful black helicopters are, how they blow up buildings to test things, how they train foreign troops. All of this is in the Sunday, March 29th, 1998. You'll see some clips of that coming up. This is not a joke by any shape of the matter. So that is what we're dealing with. I mean, when people in America are willing to stand up to this, this is police state. This is the takeover. This is training to round up people. This is not a joke. This black helicopters I used to laugh at. They're the real deal. And you're going to see a police chief talk about that and the newspaper articles. You ready to go ahead and... We'll take 3 calls and we'll go. All right, we'll take 3 calls and then we'll go ahead and go to the tape. And listen, a lot of you say, why are you so excited out there? I'm trying to get the young people, the people that are being brainwashed and dumbed down on the team. I'm trying to get real politicians and real leaders and real preachers and real everybody to get involved in this. This is not a joke. This is the history of the planet. This is the history of human society. And you have got to understand, we've got to get excited about this. This is our life. This is our system. And the European Union's going online. They just bought Chrysler. They're going to take over most of the Fortune 500 because they're going to have a fiat money system.
They agreed on currency finally. As a matter of fact, I think they said within the year they're going to start, checks are going to start working within that European Union, the new European Union,
and then within
European
2 years,
Union currency.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, caller.
Okay, guys. Hey, I caught a little thing on C-SPAN last night. It was a Republican senator speaking about how Bill Clinton was involved in the sale of high-technology computer systems to China. He had okayed it.
And
had
nuclear weapons,
group,
nuclear guidance.
It enabled them to
Target
have
U.S.
missiles that, for the first time, would reach America.
Yes, sir.
Are y'all familiar with that?
Yes, sir. I have the tape. I'm going to play that for you. Probably some of it tomorrow. It's about an hour long, but I'll play some of it.
And look how asleep we are. Back in a recent Republican administration, there was all kinds of hoopla about supplying arms and trade for hostages, and here's Clinton just providing computers and all sorts of technology.
Well, hold on.
What do we got in return?
Do you know where I could get a copy of an article about that?
I'm going to... some of the congressmen and senators that you'll see tomorrow night actually read out of the record. I mean, the actual transfers, the money transfers. We have military special computers. We have missile guidance systems and nuclear technology, separation technology in 3- and 2-stage intercontinental ballistic missiles being transferred to China. I mean, I don't know why he's doing it. It's very, very frightening.
That's treasonous. That man needs to be hung for treason.
Well... No, we don't need to create a martyr. He needs to serve a long term in federal prison.
Any other questions?
That's it. Good night.
Take care. Take another call. Hello, caller.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I got a question and a comment. Question, do you really expect people to believe what you're saying when they refuse to even believe that the president could be having an affair? And second,
Personally, I don't give a damn about furniture. 90% of people have never counted. I'm looking for that 5% that's willing to stand up. We're rapidly approaching that momentum point. America has not been sold out by Americans. America has been sold out by traitors, and we've sold out America in that we haven't punished traitors. We've been cowards. We've let them whisper in our ear with very flashy media.
And I agree. I mean, we're reaching a critical mass in this country. It's been shown all throughout history, through all types of governments, not just this one, that Alex is exactly right on this point. You've never needed 50% or 60% or 80% of the people to make a change. You only need about 5 to 8%, and we're right there.
Highly motivated people that aren't cowards.
You said you had a second question?
You know, one thing to say, it is in my genes, it is in my genetics, as it is in all humans, that I must stand up. It comes naturally. It is a compulsion. It is almost a problem. I never knew what was going on. I knew we were getting screwed. I was happy. I was making money. But I saw the lies. I saw the abuse. I saw the manipulation. And look, if somebody smiles at me and wants to con me, I see through it. A lot of you out there just suck it up and love it. There's nothing more pathetic. I don't mean you, caller.
okay. And the comment was just simply that you're talking about old news. If I'm not mistaken, I was hearing about the selling of the guidance technology last week, if not the week before, and today I'm just starting to hear it on the mainstream.
Right.
Well, sir, we really appreciate your call.
Real quick, I wanted to get a plug in. Free Press International, if you'll dial up realtime.net / and that really should be the, and I've forgotten the name of that little squirrely symbol, but anyways, that's not a dash.
Tilde?
That's a tilde, that's right. Dream / WFP.html.
Caller, go
or you
ahead.
Can call
Caller, go ahead.
416-8168.
Go ahead, caller.
Yes, hello?
Yes.
Yes, I was really curious about the sonic weapons that make you vomit.
Well, they call them non-lethal weapons. You can buy them actually out of catalogs now, legally, but these are the small, weak ones. They have them. I was watching Discovery Channel 2 years ago, and they said, well, they're non-lethal, but if you aim a microwave at a helicopter or a car, it blows everything up and the thing will crash. These sonic weapons can actually burst your organs, the big ones they have, and they call them non-lethal. They're crowd control. You turn them up as high as you want, and the little demon running the machine usually likes to crank it up all the way and burst your organs. So yes, these are being sold in trade magazines.
Is it true also about is Chuck Norris also implementary in the Delta Force training?
I don't know. He's done some movie about it. Delta Force used to be good. Delta Force, you're about to hear a former Delta Force commander, Steve Barry. He's going to tell you about the UN taking control of the Delta Force, about the FBI, about them practicing to round up people. That's coming up at the very end of the...
That's possibly a fallacy then.
No, I know he's done a movie about it. I know he's a martial arts expert, a champion. I'm sure he's taught them, but mainly Delta Force practices rappelling, automatic weapons, marksmanship. That's mainly what they're into.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thanks
and
for
hey,
your comments.
don't be cowed by the Delta Force. These are Americans. We've got to stand up with pride and say, we're Americans, protect us. We need to get the police on our side. We need to get the young people on our side. We need to get governors out that are traitors. We need to get a cohesion and say, we're family. Announce ourselves. We're Americans. We know the media's lying. We know they're controlled, and we're going to kick this thing in the butt.
I think that's real important.
I want to call, okay, everybody, this piece starts kind of slow, shows you some documentation from the San Antonio Express News. Then it gets into the police chief, Ramsey Clark, and then Stephen Barry, former Delta Force and Special Forces consultant and commander, who served for 20-something years. You're going to hear him telling you why he got out in 95 with an honorable discharge. He still consults for the Pentagon. He is the publisher of the Resistor. So just stay tuned. I document stuff. This is not sound bites. This is documentation of what's happening in San Antonio, the police state. You have got to call Kirk Watson. You have got to call your council people. We do not want Delta Force training with live fire in our city. It is racist. It's going to probably go on in East Austin. You heard the statesman from this Sunday. They're going to do it. And the only government with a history of testing biological weapons is America. They've done it inside America in the 50s and 60s. That's what's declassified. So how dare then, and the statesmen tell us that biological and chemical attacks are imminent. They are preparing us. They are going to create a crisis because they know that they can't deal with a real political backlash and the restructuring and the reforming and getting back to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Fascism, authoritarian command and control has taken root. Me and my host, Steve Lane, co-host, will be right back. Please stay tuned, and you'll want to tape this because this is documentation. We have got to stand up to Delta Force. The first city in the country, to my knowledge, and according to Chief Philippus, has stood up to this, and the mayor in San Antonio. This can be a major step towards stopping police state if the locals don't let them train and practice taking up our firearms. So stay tuned the next 35 minutes for a real education. We'll go ahead and go to that tape. Steve, doing a great job. Damn right we're excited.
But to those that know about the growing police state, the federally controlled system of control, black helicopters are known as the strike force of the New World Order. They are the hostage rescue team, known as the HRT, the Delta Force, and FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement. They have one thing in common. They wear black, they wear ski masks, and they're under Justice Department, that is, executive control. And you're probably asking yourself, well, what's the problem with that? What do we have to hide? It's not the American people that have something to hide. It's the traitorous agencies controlled by traitors in our government that have something to hide. You're fixing to see a May 8th, 1998 interview with the head chief of police of the San Antonio Police Department, Al Philippus. The chief has had the nerve to stand up to this federal intrusion. And it's more than just a federal intrusion. This is more than just the Justice Department. Because the Delta Force is actually under Pentagon and Central Intelligence Agency control. The Delta Force is America's most elite strike force. They are not meant to subdue criminals or rescue hostages. They are meant to kill, and kill quickly. That is, eliminate threats. But threats to who? Me and you? Who do these people work for? The Delta Force, the government says, doesn't even exist. Well, the chief says they exist, and they were making payoffs around town. This is a story that should be national. Let's go ahead and, real fast before we get to the chief, let's read from the May 6th, 1998 San Antonio Express News article. First came the loud whirling of helicopter blades, the booming explosions followed by the crackle of small arms fire. Dazed, confused, and frightened nearby residents in working-class homes, awakened in the dead of night, tumbled from their beds, scrambled for shelter, and called for help. This wasn't war-torn Bosnia, the terrorist-ravaged Middle East, or the crime-plagued city of Washington, but another night of Army Special Operations training, Delta Force style, this time in Houston, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Des Plaines, Illinois. But it gets much worse. The elite, deadly, and super-secret Delta Force admitted to the San Antonio paper that, yes, Delta Force confirmed $100,000 in property damage resulting from an explosion in a warehouse district near New Orleans. In Miami, a bullet fired during a Delta Force raid went awry, ricocheting into the window of an all-night restaurant. Commandos in Charlotte flew helicopters at treetop level over a lower middle-class, predominantly African-American neighborhood near a warehouse district on the night of March 4th, 1997, prompting one man to grab his shotgun out of fear. But what does all this mean? What does the militarization mean? What do the bribes and the intimidation mean? What's going on with all this military equipment that's being transferred to police departments that will go along with the game plan? What's really happening? What is the threat? Who controls it? You're going to find that out in the next 30 minutes. And when you find out, you're going to be very angry. You see, the people that are talking about terrorism, they're the ones that are engaging in it. And that's what makes this so pivotal. This is the first time that a police chief and a mayor have stood up to the Delta Force, the secret military squad, and the puppets that control them. Yes, Bill Clinton is nothing but a hideous, megalomaniacal puppet of the transnational criminals based in Europe and New York. And then we're going to show you how the Austin American-Statesman and Austin, with open arms, are going to accept the Delta Force under the guise of terrorism fears from biological attack. And then we'll get to a radio interview with Steve Berry, former Delta Force commander who left in 1995 with an honorable discharge, who still is a consultant for the Pentagon. He says they're practicing rounding up citizens. But the Cox News Service, which owns the Austin American-Statesman, which is a CFR rag, would have you believe that it's only a bunch of kooks out there and will quote people from San Antonio like they're some type of teamwork. I'm sorry, I've spoken to the mayor and gotten an actual interview, again, with the police chief, and that's a flat lie. Now, perhaps the fire chief was one of the people that was approached by Delta Force. But I'll leave that to the police chief to decide. And later we'll get back to some more documents, some more information about who has a history of attacking the U.S. with biologicals. Only the Pentagon's done that. 1950, 1966. And that's what's declassified. Well, that's enough documentation for now. Later we'll get into that $4.6 billion, that's $4.6 billion that they're handing out as candy to local police departments. And most of your departments are eager to take the Gestapo money. San Antonio is not one. Let's go ahead and get to the chief. As soon as the story broke, we understood the importance of it and thought it should be national news. Of course, it didn't even make the papers here in Austin. Chief Philippus, we really appreciate you taking out the time. A lot of public officials and public servants are afraid to even talk to the public or the press about things like this. When did you first become aware that Delta Force, the most elite training force in America, is what the Pentagon says, wanted to train with actual live fire or blanks here in San Antonio? Is that true?
Yes, that's correct. That actually started probably, I want to say, back in February when they first approached us, maybe even earlier than that, about doing some operations, in the San Antonio area.
And we'll get into this more later, and I appreciate you taking the time again. Well, basically, you're the person that knows about it. What were your major reservations in asking the mayor to tell them that y'all didn't want them to train here and to cease training here?
Well, a lot of things happened. First of all, the organization came into the city and never really approached the city as a whole. We've gotten together with the mayor and said we need to speak to all these different departments and request some assistance. Various groups and individuals came into the city and approached different people at different levels. The police department was contacted, the city manager's office was contacted about using city facilities, various business owners were contacted through the economic development department, the fire department was contacted by different individuals, and so there was never any coordinated approach to the city of San Antonio. When we found out of that, we had some reservations, but we were willing at least to listen. But then we started finding out that discussions were happening at other different levels, and there was no communication, no coordination between that. We also found out that leases had been negotiated with private business people throughout the city to utilize their vacant buildings without any coordination with the police department, because we were originally told there were probably going to be a couple of locations, and later on we find out that there's 12 locations. And yet we were never brought into this at the beginning.
Last Saturday's Austin American-Statesman did an article about how they're practicing taking over police departments in Chicago. In fact, I've got a copy of that. I can give you a copy of that after the interview. I should have brought it up from my car. I just remembered. That's one thing that some cities I've heard have had reservations about. They call it touring the police department, but they actually practice dynamic entry and other things at the police departments. I heard that they were planning to do this in Houston, that they've already done some training along with the Marines and other forces of the military. Have you ever heard of anything like this before?
No, I have not. They did offer to allow our SWAT teams to do training with them in these particular exercises, but, our missions are different. Theirs deals specifically with international type situations. Our deals with local situations, and if an incident were to occur in this country, it would be local law enforcement, the FBI, and others that would deal with that.
Whereas
So,
the Delta Force is purely kill the terrorist.
whatever it is, I'm not so sure what it is, but it's at an international level, and so our missions, our tactics are somewhat different. And I'm very proud of the SWAT team that we have. I think we have one of the best in the country. We do a lot of training for other agencies, and I think that we have the skills and the expertise to deal with those situations.
Why did the mayor, and I heard this quoted on KTSA, San Antonio 550 station, 2 days ago, I heard it quoted that the mayor said that he didn't appreciate the dishonesty of the Delta Force. I was curious. We called the mayor's office, and they, Jackie O'Donnell, I believe is her name, she told us that you were the mayor's spokesman on this. Can you tell us exactly why the mayor would use such strong language and call them dishonest?
Well, I think that there were various approaches. For example, when I originally said no several weeks ago, matter of fact, a couple of months ago, but no was never no. And then no was never no. End of runs were done around to various community leaders. I had someone...
Excuse me, sir, you're saying that they ignored the police chief, and under our Constitution, you're the same as the sheriff, and you run the city or the county? You're telling me that Delta Force was ignoring your order?
Well, I don't want to say they ignored it, but in a roundabout way, yes, because what they would do, once I said no, they went to various individuals in the community to bring pressure to bear to get me to change my mind. For example, there was a community leader who I have a great deal of respect for, and we have a very good relationship that they went to. I get a call from him, and he says, Chief, there's some people in here that they're in town, and it was part of their role here. It didn't say who it was. They need to meet with the mayor and the police chief. Well, of course, this gentleman, I've worked very closely with him on a number of projects. I said, sure, have him give me a call. Now, I'd already said no. Well, then I find out it's the same group. So they identified somebody, apparently, that I know that's very high in the community to make an approach to me and get me to change my mind. Well, then, when we said no, then some elected officials were contacted to bring pressure to bear. And then offers were made to give money, cash money, to elected officials' charities if they could get us to change our minds. I mean, as one of my deputy chiefs said, in some circles that's called bribery.
Well, it is called bribery, but more importantly, it's called manipulation of the constitutional system and the takeover of local police departments. And that $4.6 billion that we just saw in the Statesman that's so wonderful is buying them a lot of control if they can't buy the police chiefs off like they did Elizabeth Watson for that $244,000 a year job at the Justice Department. Let's hear him say that one more time.
To make an approach to me and get me to change my mind. Well, then, when we said no, then some elected officials were contacted to bring pressure to bear. And then offers were made to give money, cash money, to elected officials' charities if they could get us to change our minds. I mean, as one of my deputy chiefs said, in some circles that's called bribery.
Why do you think, and again this is just speculation, I've seen the large bookshelf of policing and criminology over there, and I know it's no small task to be a police chief of a modern city. Why do you think in Chicago, and if you're not aware of this, I'll get you a copy of it, that they're practicing taking over police stations and fire stations and bridges? That seems like a military takeover of the city.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't even want to speculate on that. I'm not familiar that those types of things are occurring.
Oh, yes.
Certainly there was no approach made to us to do those kind of things.
Well, that's good. You talked about a memo from Delta Force?
Yeah, because what happened is various elected officials were being contacted. I have 10 city council members and a mayor, and I just wanted to alert them as to what was happening, that these situations were occurring, that they might be contacted by these individuals, and that in the best interest of public safety, and that's what I continue to fall back on. We didn't feel that it was in the best interest of the citizens of San Antonio to do that type of thing. All I can say is that, no just never seemed to be no. And even after they told us, we don't need you, we're still going to do our training exercise at other locations in and around the San Antonio area, but we're not doing them here. Next time, I'm still getting contacted by various officials. I mean, they never would take no for an answer.
So they weren't respecting your jurisdiction?
They were not respecting our jurisdiction. I don't think they respected our decision. to go into predominantly minority areas of the city where we had vacant warehouses and buildings and try to do those types of exercises at those locations in the middle of the night.
Oh, I'm sorry, middle of the night?
In the middle of the night. Sometime between 9 p.m. and midnight. People become frightened. And we do a lot of our decision-making on experiences that have happened in a lot of other cities. We were very concerned with some things that have happened over there, and we didn't get any real good, clear answers.
So they're being secretive about it?
Very secretive.
And you kind of, the city and the mayor and yourself, as the police chief, you kind of felt that it was a little odd that they wouldn't trust y'all. I mean, y'all are the authorities here.
A little odd, and once I made contact with my peers in some of the other major cities, and they shared with me some of their experiences over there, the decision really was very easy. My interest as police chief is the citizens of the city.
Yes, sir.
Period. And I was not about to jeopardize the safety under an exercise of this magnitude under any circumstance.
Well, you can't say it any better than that. This isn't some wild conspiracy theorist. This is Al Philippus, head police chief in San Antonio, Texas. Oh, and the mayor, too, Howard Peak. He says that it's dangerous and that they're dishonest. And, of course, there's former Delta Force commanders like Stephen Barry there to tell you that it's to round up the general population. It's a practice run. Oh, and by the way, according to the May 10th, 1998, Sunday edition of the Austin American Statesman, Metro and State, they're conferring with people here in Austin, and sometime after June of this summer, they plan to have this training here in Austin, Texas. I guess our safety isn't important. Despite the track record in North Carolina, $100,000 damage, and in Miami, a stray bullet from the Delta Force going into a crowded restaurant. What is wrong with Kirk Watson? I hope he shows the same will that Mayor Howard Peak did. But I think Watson's just concerned with making all the big, fat, juicy kickbacks. Fix it, Watson. That's your job. Protect us. Quit sucking off us. And some of you are probably saying, oh, Alex, why are you being so angry about this? Because the statesmen, they know this has happened down in San Antonio. They know this is going on. They're not that ignorant. 4 days after all this comes down, they're writing stories about how wonderful it is and how they're coming to town, these secret teams. I mean, this is dangerous. Helicopters could crash. Anything could happen with these low-flying night missions. And Kirk Watson and these people, they know this is going on. They should throw the Delta Force and all the rest of them out of our city. And I'll get to that later. These are the guys that have a history of spraying our cities with biological weapons. Yes, I'll get to that later, but back to the chief. I'm just documenting every bit of this because I'm tired of it. The propaganda's out of control.
And once I made contact with my peers in some of the other major cities, and they shared with me some of their experiences over there, the decision really was very easy. My interest as police chief is the citizens of the city.
Yes, sir.
Period. And I was not about to jeopardize the safety under an exercise of this magnitude under any circumstance.
What types of training were they wanting to engage in? I mean, again, I heard some reports that they wanted to do live fire with blanks and perhaps actually some incendiary flashbangs and things.
Yeah, I don't know the particulars of that. I know that they wanted to use some explosives for entry into some of these buildings, some of the so-called ceramic bullets, which would be fired into little traps, which were supposed to catch those, which would disintegrate supposedly on contact. But I know that in one city, American city, that one of those bullets got astray and going through a window and down almost into a restaurant. So, things can go wrong.
What city was that?
I believe that it was in Miami.
That's incredible. So, basically right now, as it stands, and until they actually confer with y'all better or change their plans, they're not really welcome to train here in San Antonio?
We are not going to support any of their operations. They may do some things at the various military bases here in San Antonio. That certainly is their jurisdiction, but we will not support any operations in the city limits.
I want you to know something. The decision you've made, if things continue to move with the European Union, and Chrysler just got bought, they're probably going to buy up most of the Fortune 500. They're coming online with a new currency. There are a lot of people in Clinton's cabinet, and they're in control, that are pushing this, and I just want to commend you for what you've done, but in the future, we really, and there's a small chance of this, but we really count on law enforcement officials locally like y'all to protect the people and uphold the law. And again, I just want to commend you for recognizing some of the behavior of the Delta Force and expelling them.
Well, I appreciate that. Again, the decision really was not that difficult. We have the interest of the citizens of San Antonio. This is a military city. We have a tremendous amount of respect for the military and what they do. But I do not have any respect for the tactics that were used by the advance team coming in here.
You're saying that they were disrespectful?
They were courteous and friendly to us, to our faces, but again, when you make a decision, you try to get information, to go around and try to put influence on you from pressure groups and individuals, either elected or in the community. That's sad.
You're not hitting to borderline Gestapo-esque tactics in politics.
No, I think it was always done very courteously, very professionally, but it still left a bad taste in my mouth.
And I've seen the September 23rd, 1997 Lair News Hour. 60 Minutes a few months later came out with a story about secret military training with local police departments. It seems that Miami has embraced it. It seems that LA has embraced it. And with some of the volatile problems they have, I could, in some instances, understand it. Are you aware, or exactly is the scope, if you can tell us, about the levels of military training between law enforcement here and the military?
We do not train with the military. Our mission and our roles are different. We trained on some of the military bases in order to have access to some of the firing ranges and things like that. But we've got a very good police academy facility out there that we can do a lot of that. We train internally inside of our own city.
I just got this news of this and just came down here in the last day or so. For you, sir, I'm going to get you a packet, and I'm saying this now, so I'll have to do it. I'm going to get you a Lair News Hour. I'm going to get you a 60 Minutes, and they tell you it's wonderful. I'm going to get you some of the other information where local... Now, here's the question, and this is my last one. I really appreciate the time. Where local police commanders, the commander of the LA SWAT team, sits right there on camera. He's also a consultant in other cities. And Peter Krasser. And he says, when they ask him about the training with Delta Force and other military forces, he looks at the camera and smiles and says, "I'm sorry, that's classified. I can't talk about that." Now, to me, that's when 6-8 months ago when the red flags went up, when I saw a local law enforcement official saying that something was classified with the military and he couldn't talk about it. And that's why we're here. Again, we just want to thank y'all for showing independence of Texas, of America, of San Antonio, that y'all aren't open to that. What do you think about, and I understand you haven't seen this, but if that is true on Lair News Hour, do you think that that's a red flag or something strange?
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it's not going to happen on my watch here in San Antonio. It's just totally inappropriate. I was never approached or asked to maintain classified confidentiality on this whole issue. I was in the military. I had a clearance, and I understand that, but nobody's ever asked me to sign anything or say anything of that nature. So.
What would you do if they did, if they said we need the local police to do something classified in conjunction with the feds? I mean, I'm not a total student of the Constitution, but I've read it 10 or 15 times, and I've read the Federalist Papers. That right there looks like police state to me.
We don't do that. If we need to work with the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, or other federal law enforcement agencies that have jurisdiction in this country, then we will certainly do that. But we're not about to engage in those kind of activities with various military groups. Exactly right.
Man, that's great.
I appreciate it.
This guy right here. This is the kind of law enforcement. President Philippus, right here.
Not hardly.
No, I'm serious. This stuff is running rampant in Austin and Houston, and it's just crazy.
My pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
We're leaving the San Antonio Police Department now, and we found that they were very honest and very upfront with us. And while we were here, we saw the mainstream media. They were here doing a story on unpaid parking tickets. And we're not concerned with local law enforcement standing up for its jurisdiction against the feds and the growing supranational police state right here in San Antonio. These people should be commended. Excellent job. And now a few words from Ramsey Clark, former Attorney General of the United States of America in the LBJ administration. He also worked in the Kennedy and the Carter administration. He's going to tell you a little bit about the growing police state and who controls it, the power behind the scenes. Again, Austin American statesman, Kirk Watson, where are you when former attorney generals have the will to talk about the CFR and the Trilateral Commission and the police state? Is he a kook too? Well, let's go ahead and see what he has to say.
Every individual has an obligation to be involved in this struggle if you want to live free and want your children who come after to live free. You can't be a bystander. And right now we really risk this spread of militarization throughout the world that is endangering the poor everywhere. It's a desire to control by force. There's so many people and so much poverty, and there's so much technology that can destroy people that is being employed against people everywhere. The poor here, the poor nations abroad, got to cut back on all hardware for police. Police ought to serve the people, not be a force. It shouldn't be a paramilitary concept. It ought to be a social service concept that deals sensitively with the people. We have to deal with the basic problems. While we have poverty, we're going to have the problems that poverty creates. Poverty is the mother of crime. Plato told us that 2,500 years ago, and it was pretty obvious then. It's pretty obvious now.
But the thing that I don't think that the American public realizes is that this military training is going on. What are some things that we can do to get this reversed, hopefully?
Well, I think we have to resist at every level. If you don't work at the national level, you can't expect the local level. I mean, after all, we're providing a lot of federal funds for the local level, and they love it.
And that brings control.
It brings control. It brings technology. It brings things they don't need, you know.
Infrared.
Who needed tanks out here? Yeah, you've got everything that billions and billions of dollars of research and development to provide the military are now being
It's going into civilian control. Have you seen Waco Rules of Engagement?
Sure.
It's horrifying, isn't it?
It's horrifying. The whole story is even more horrifying.
Sir, I didn't actually see this last year, but I heard about it reported in some of the alternative press. Is it true that last year you spoke about how the Trilateral Commission is running the country?
Well, I've criticized the Trilateral Commission for many years, but I don't really think the Trilateral Commission is running the country. I think
CFR.
I think the same people are
control it.
The same people that run the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral.
Those are just front groups.
Sure. I mean, they're just
meeting houses.
They're organizations through which they implement their power, and it's an international group that maintains power through the multinational corporations and the media and all the rest.
Yes, sir. And wouldn't you say that now what you have is corporate socialism for them and slavery for us?
Well, you've got corporate wealth for them. they don't.
It's called stealing.
It could be called stealing, although it's stealing on such a grand scale that you'd have to call it grand larceny, I think.
I've done interviews at protests and things, and the police walk up and say, stay behind the demarcation line, and you'll hear them talking, watch the civilians. They're using military terminology. Is this dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous. A paramilitary concept of police is a police state, you know, and our Constitution was created to prevent a police state. Yet our police expenditures, our creation of the fear of crime and the belief that you can solve crime by more prisons, by the death penalty, and by beating people in the head is crazy. It's just war with our own society. And you see it come to a head at a peaceful church outside of Waco, Texas, Mount Carmel.
Now let's hear from former Delta Force commander and still a consultant for the Pentagon, Steve Barry, on the Carl Wigglesworth show in San Antonio. The same day I was down there talking to the police chief. Now, I do apologize for some of the sound quality. This was taped by an associate of mine here in Austin, Texas. It does have some interference and things because it is a San Antonio station, but bear with it. It's short.
Delta's mission purview, their mission profile, is so point target specific that within the facility that was constructed for them, they could reconstruct the layout of the target that they need to attack within that facility. why then do they need to attack cold targets
Right.
in U.S. cities?
And why? Give me an answer.
Because they're preparing for domestic counterterrorism operations, but the domestic counterterrorism operations they're preparing for are not against foreign terrorists on U.S. soil. They're against U.S. citizens who are going to resist the increasing socialization of America.
Our guest, Stephen Barry. We've been arguing this back and forth, Stephen Barry. We have had many people who say, what are you talking about? Let Delta Force come on in. There's nothing wrong with them using abandoned buildings and being in the streets of San Antonio with their helicopters and their troops. In fact, are you unpatriotic as an American if you don't allow them to train here in our city streets? And then the other side saying things like I've been saying, that this makes no sense whatsoever. It's an endangerment, and our mayor and our police chief have gone along those same lines. And is there more to it than that, Stephen Barry?
Well, what we're looking at is an incestuous relationship between the active duty military and national law enforcement, both at the local, state, and federal level.
Barry, U.S. Army retired. He was in Special Forces. You're not convinced, and what do you think might else be going on?
Well, almost immediately following Waco, in the spring and early summer of 1993, the operators at the Combat Applications Group were given a survey to elicit their responses for operating under control of the United Nations. Immediately following that survey, between September and about May or June of 1995, a lot of the old operators, the people who first formed Delta back in 1978, 1977, 1978, began leaving Delta and coming into Special Forces to run a team or work on a staff for a year or maybe 2 years and then retire. So in essence, what they were doing is they were chasing out the old operators who knew what their mission profile was and was supposed to be, and bringing in new people who really didn't care whether that mission profile was being met or expanded upon.
So basically, you've got a bunch of young punks that don't care about the Constitution, that were raised in what David Rockefeller called the government training centers, or what he called the public schools, helpless people yielding themselves to our molding hands. These guys are now in Delta Force. And there's the statesman from May 10th, Metro and State, Terrorism Fear Spurs Training. They don't talk about what happened in San Antonio or in other cities. Oh, no, they talk about how wonderful it is and how they're going to be training here, and doesn't tell you much more. It just says that you'll stay real safe from terrorism and biological and chemical attack. Well, let's take a look at some declassified MK-Ultra documents which were republished in Popular Mechanics, and watered down, by the way, where they admit that in 1950 and 1966 they used chemical and biologicals on us. So the only chemical and biological attacks in U.S. history were done by our federal government. So I guess these teams are there to protect us from our own government. So our government is protecting us from the government. That's good. But in this Statesman article, again from May 10th, 1998, they wonderfully, just a couple days after the event in San Antonio that I'm sure they're aware of, that they don't want to tell the citizens of Austin about, in San Antonio, where the mayor and the police chief stood up against it. Of course, you saw that interview earlier. That's for Statesman writers to hear that. I know some of you trash are watching. I'm sorry, just traitors like you. I'll quit being emotional. You sit here and you look at this, and they tell you that chemical and biological attack is imminent, that the government says that. And it's not a question of will it happen, but when will it happen? So they're preparing us, and some of the news stations go around and tell us that all this is fixing to happen and the sky is falling and where will the next terrorist attack will be. They're entering it into our psychology. And then once you have the information about Oklahoma City, and it's clear, I've gone over that 1,000 times, that they were engaged in that. So again, who has the track record? Who is already an offender? The federal government and the giant secret government that's grown up around it. So thanks a lot, Statesman. Oh, by the way, in that article it says that in June they're going to set the date for sometime after June for this training to go on here in town. They don't say what secret federal teams it'll be. They just say some secret federal teams. So, but they tell you how wonderful it is and how it's going to keep you safe out there. with the guise of keeping us safe from terrorism, $4.6 billion, $4,600,000,000 to set up these systems. This is the final conflagration. And FEMA, only 7% of its money's for floods. Now, there's Popular Mechanics, April 1998 issue. They take declassified documents and tell you that it's all part of the past, all part of the Cold War. And see, this rationalizing is only making it worse and worse. Excuses for more and more powers. And as we stand up the IRS, more and more trouble. 1950, San Francisco, the Navy released a deadly biological weapon that resulted in deaths. That remains classified. And in 1966, right there at the bottom of your page, yes, sir, they released a biological weapon in the New York subway, and deaths did result, but that remains classified. That is America, ladies and gentlemen, and they're having to bring this information forward now, many years after, because people are shining the spotlight of truth on it. I hope this presentation has woke you up to what's happening. You better get motivated and get out of your shell. America is under siege. And if you didn't see the first of the program, yes, this week, the Express News in San Antonio, their main paper, told you point blank, black helicopters and the whole shebang and the police chief and the whole deal. It's true, and they stood up to it. This is police state, and our one hope is to get local law enforcement on our side and people in the military on our side and educate them about this threat. I know it's hard for a lot of Americans who have been sucked in by the con man you see on your screen. President Clinton is just the latest in a long line of transnational criminals. If they can't buy off a president, they'll get rid of the president. We saw this with Kennedy and before him with Lincoln and their attempted assassination of 7 times of Andrew Jackson, who wouldn't give them central banks. Well, since 1913, they've had the system in the bag. Roosevelt in 33 was their shoe-in, and everything's just been accelerating. We are in deep trouble. And people out there, you can't doubt that these plans have been accelerating under Bill Clinton, simply because he's the front man in there at the time when the New World Order, known as globalism, the future, is making its move. And yes, their future is the future if we don't stand up against it. But the future is not always good. I want a good future, one where the IRS can't bend you over a barrel at their leisure, a place where you can raise your children and have some control over your destiny. We need to impeach President Clinton, not because that'll solve our problems, no, but to show the
establishment that if they try to replace or if they try to continue this, that we will get rid of their agents. This is the Second American Revolution, not the Civil War created by the British. Read your history books. Americans are standing up more and more. Police chiefs, politicians are sick of it. They have this inner fire and they're not going to lay down to it. You've seen the facts. The only people to attack America with chemical and biologicals have been our own government. We're going to lay down to this. Don't feel weak. Don't feel petty. You have power. You have the capacity to stand up to this. You're not rich if you make $200 grand a year. Quit feeling like you're part of the establishment out there. They laugh at you while you run around wearing your baubles, your trappings of success. You're a well-clothed slave. We don't offer utopia. There's no cult compound. There's not even a name of our organizations. There's many different people who are standing up. And more, it's snowballing. We are going to win this fight. Let's get some comments from Steve Lane, and let's go to Greg Erickson, another guy that's standing up.
I can't stress enough, it's colonial America all over again. What we see happening today is the enemies of the Constitution of the United States of America have become the best recruiters for the freedom movement. Study your history. It's happening all over again.
Quartered among us.
In the 1770s, there was not this popularity for revolting against the British government. Most people were loyalists. In fact, about 95% of the population, or some of the more conservative
about 50-something% were Tories, and then a giant mass was furniture, and then about 4%, yes.
Yeah, I think that would be probably more accurate there about the furniture bit or the fair weather.
Yeah, you had a huge group that were pro, you had a bunch of furniture, and you had a very small group of rebel force
And
leaders.
what happened was is some brilliant American generals led some British generals on some cross-country chases using guerrilla-type warfare, and they drew out the British forces far enough away from their bases that they had to start the process of quartering, and they would take people's best cattle and steal 50 of their horses and sleep with their daughters and whatever else, and eventually, after about a year and a half, 2 years, they pissed off enough people that the American citizens grew restless, to
And
say
what
the
is-
least,
what
and
is
that's what turned the tide.
What is the IRS doing today? No innocent until proven guilty, no accountability. We're tired of front groups. We're tired of lies.
I'm not going to get too sidetracked here, but I think it's very interesting. I heard in some of the mainstream press the other day that the Congress has decided to give us more rights when it comes to the IRS.
They give us?
Now, let me tell you something right there.
It's a front.
Study your Constitution
It's a
very
scam.
carefully. There's only one entity, being, whatever you want to call it, that gives you rights, and that is your Creator. If you believe in nature creating you, if you believe that God created you, that's who endows you with inalienable rights. Not some government agency, not some Congress, not men. Men don't bestow rights upon other men.
This is where I'm a libertarian. It doesn't matter what your thoughts are, what diversion, what balkanization tactic they use. I have freedom over myself and my family, and they have control of themselves until we violate someone else. And then the system isn't perfect, but it is to punish criminals. They give criminals unending rights. They disarm the public, where only the criminals and the government have it. They are feeding upon you. We're going to win this fight. We're standing up. The synergy has begun. And the one thing we've got going for us is their false aplomb, their arrogance. They're so full of themselves with these lackeys licking their boots every day. That doesn't matter. People matter. And the first stages of the Second American Revolution, a peaceful information revolution, has begun. And know this, the enemy that has tested chemical, biological, and nuclear here in our country, you've seen the MK Ultra documents on my program, on this program, may use terrorism to scare the rest of the sheep into submitting. Know that. They have the track record. They have the history. They're what cops called convicted felons. Who are you going to trust? People that are out here putting their necks on the line? People that are willing to do this because it's instinctive to stand up for their people because we're not backstabbing? Or are you going to stand up for the criminal establishment, the transnational corporations that use socialism for the rich to control your wealth? Learn the new political paradigm. Let's go to Greg Erickson. His free press is standing up. Let's go to Greg.
Greg, are you there?
There? Hello?
Greg, go ahead.
How y'all doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
What'd you think about the police chief?
Oh, that's a great story. Great story.
What do you got for us tonight, Greg?
I just want to do a couple of PSAs for the public for Freedom Press International. It's an organization I've started. We're having a KI controlled media protest at the KI studios to send a message up to the national boys, CBS, NBC, ABC.
Refusing to submit.
Yeah, tell them to start reporting the real news, like Hong Kong newspapers have been reporting that 3 million people are dead in North Korea from starvation. Little things like that.
But the paper reports on that. The Statesman through the past, I've read the articles here, it's because of bad government management that half the population is at starvation levels. Isn't it funny that command and control never feeds the people?
Yeah, this is going to be May 29th. That's coming up here pretty quick. Friday, May 29th at 5 p.m. That's going to be during their live broadcast. And this is going to be broadcast over worldwide shortwave radio. This will be a protest aired on shortwave radio.
Well, Greg, I'll tell you, with all the solar activity, it makes normal FM and AMs weaker. It makes shortwave. I was listening to you and Jeff's shortwave show Friday in the car as I was doing an interview with Carl Wigglesworth after I'd talked to the police chief driving between San Antonio. I was probably in New Braunfels. And I was listening in my car to the shortwave, listening to you guys.
Good. Great.
So right now, the sunspot activity and the solar flare activity has charged the upper atmosphere. Your program is just 1,000 times more powerful. And by the way, they are on the most powerful shortwave station in the world.
They are. They are. And that's at the KI studios?
Okay, this protest is going to be at 10,000, I think it's 700 Metric Boulevard. That's where the KI studios are going to be out. We encourage everybody to come out. And another thing that Free Press International is doing, we're having a fundraiser party June 3rd at the Green Mesquite Barbecue. That's Wednesday, June.
Yeah, I don't think we're allowed to do that, Greg.
Sorry about that, Greg.
I've already checked it out. I can.
Okay.
I've already checked it out.
Well,
I talked to John Villarreal. I'll take responsibility for it.
well, it's Mike's show. It's his call.
Now,
We can put your
whatever y'all
contact.
decide.
We're going to put your contact number up, though, Greg.
Okay, and I think Galen Ross is going to be speaking there.
Former NSA officer, national.
George Humphrey. Alex is going to be there. I hope Steve's going to be there. We ought to have a good time.
Good, good. What else?
And Greg, what are you doing this for? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your goal?
To raising money to buy more airtime and to place ads in magazines protesting the Illuminati and the war and famine.
Let me stop you there. For people that are making jokes right now, I think it's Illuminati Online. The Illuminati, some of them were executed in Germany in about 1778. They were killing people. They were a mafia organization. The Italian order was what the mob grew out of. It was the Carminari. The Illuminati, the translation is Carminari in Italian. It's in your history books out there. This was a real criminal organization that was taking over politicians, getting politicians in debt. It was organized crime. Basically, we're up against organized crime. They tell you all day about Italians being organized criminals, and surely they have been. There have been Italian mafia, but the real mafia are the WASP mafia from Germany, Britain, and Switzerland, and they have created allies and agents in New York. And by 1913, they took over our banking system. By 1933, they took over our government. And we have been shackled to a debt money system of criminality ever since. Not a free market system, but a system where every dollar that's printed by the Treasury, which is federal, but ordered by the private Federal Reserve through its power, every dollar that's created, $1 of debt is created, and then debt is accrued on top of that dollar. No way to get out of that debt.
Greg, anything else?
Yeah, one last thing. I just want to update everybody on the governor's story. I talked to the press secretary a few days ago. They're now telling me that Deborah Head is not the press secretary, that she is a communications manager.
See, you got her fired, Greg.
And so I told them, what do I need to do to get credentials? They told me to go to DPS. I went to DPS. DPS told me I didn't need press credentials. And then she told me, I asked her again, what do I need to do to get press credentials? She told me all you need is your driver's license.
Well, Greg, hold on a second. You don't need press credentials. Now, that's a fact. That's what free press means. Free press doesn't mean
I understand that.
Well, free press doesn't mean that some CFR newspaper can spout its lies. Free press means that anybody that has a printing press or anybody that has the system to get information out is to be left alone and is to be allowed into public functions. Now, that doesn't mean that you should be able to go into George Bush's office, his private office, but you never did that. You went into the public office, sat down quietly as you played, and DPS came in and threatened to arrest you as you sat there with your notepad and your camera.
Yeah, well, I'm going back in next week with the camera, and I'm going with my driver's license and a free Press International card.
Hey, along this line, I wish you could have been there. I'm sorry I don't have a video camera. I bought a nice micro cassette recorder on my way. But I met with George Bush on the steps of the Burnett Courthouse. He said this in front of at least 30 people. I'm not going to go into the whole story. We're short on time. Sorry about that, Greg. But he said in front of at least 30 people out loud that you'd have to be a fool to not believe that the federal government has not orchestrated a huge cover-up at Waco. George W. Bush said that. But I must admit, he went back into his good old political self by saying, well, there's nothing we can do at the state level. We have no jurisdiction. We have no authority to subpoena ATF.
A cop-out.
That's right. We have no authority to subpoena FBI. But I thought it was important to, I forgot to say that last week. That did happen last week. And so at least he's got part of it right.
Greg, thanks for the call, buddy.
Greg, I appreciate it. We're going to try and take a couple more calls here.
That's Greg Erickson. He's on every Friday night from 8:30 to 10, right?
I think that's right, 8:30 to 10.
Okay, right here, before we get to this, I want to tell you, you saw the piece with the police chief. If you've just tuned in, you can see it tomorrow night. You saw the story with the police chief in San Antonio. They kicked out Delta Force, black helicopters, all the training. We have a police chief telling you that, engaged in bribery, engaged in lying, and that's a guy on camera saying that.
Yeah.
You can't believe what he said before we had the interview. The important point, because Mike ran up to him, was talking to him, the guy was spouting all this stuff before the cameras were on. I wish we would have saved it, but what it comes down to is this. They plan anti-terrorism training after June.
In November.
Yes.
Here in November.
This is the metro and state, helicopters flying at tree level in your cities, automatic weapons fire with live ammunition and exploding buildings. So they're getting us ready, getting us used to troops in our streets in black uniforms.
And if you don't live in Westlake Hills or you don't live up near Pflugerville, you better watch out because it's probably going to happen in your neighborhood.
You must get, we have to thank our sponsor, 98.9 KJFK FM Radio. I am a host of KJFK, and I appreciate them sponsoring the show. My show sponsors this show from KJFK. My show is every Saturday evening on 98.9 KJFK FM. But first of all, I want to say this. You've got to call the mayor. You've got to raise hell. I'm not going to tell you to come follow Alex Jones. Go down there and pick at the city council. Call the media. Call radio shows. It's not futile. Get involved. We're moving things in this town. It is incredible. We are not going to have Delta Force train here. And if they do train here, I don't care if I get shot. I'm going to be out there with a video camera filming the helicopters at night as they practice blowing the doors off buildings and as they fire automatic weapons with live ammunition. You heard the police chief of San Antonio. They kicked him out. Our mayor should do the same and protect the citizens of Austin. This is wrong. And you heard former Delta Force Commander Steve Barry tell you that they're practicing rounding up American citizens and that they're putting them under United Nations banker control. This is serious.
I hate to say it, Alex, but I think unless the Delta Force is going to be shooting trees or salamanders, the mayor probably won't do a damn thing.
No, the mayor's only concerned with large pieces of property.
Let's go to this next call.
Yeah, let's go.
Caller, go ahead. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, caller. We'll go to the next caller.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Go ahead.
Hi, I can't hear you, but I'm Jeff. Great show tonight, guys. That was an excellent interview with San Antonio. I'd like to tell you about a little experience I had this weekend. My wife and I went camping in Paceman Park, and we were just out there and get away from the city Saturday night, enjoy the stars and the moon and everything. About 10 o'clock or so, on the horizon, here comes this low-level flying helicopter with high intensity spotlight, and just flying up and down the campsites and shining this light in our eyes. That's real good for stargazing, I guess.
They're just practicing. What's your first name?
Jeff.
Jeff, they're just practicing harassing you. It's all part of the fear, part of the psychology.
To get you used to it.
But we're not going to be afraid of it. We're going to stand up to this. By the way, the Commissioner's Court cheated the people and told them back in '97 that the $2,031,000 Sheriff's Department command complex was for Starflight. They admit now, and we played the tapes, they admit it is for helicopters with infrared that can see through your walls. So don't worry, they'll be watching you and your wife tonight.
Yeah.
We've got them.
But
hold on a second. Here's the key. Here is the key point that you've got to understand. We have got to raise hell. We have got to stand up. Everybody watch this program. Again, it is not futile. Get involved. And the point I have to make about this is that this is going on. Local police departments that'll put up with it, that'll go along with it, are given lots of money. Those that don't are threatened and they attempt to bribe public officials. This is control of our civilization.
And if you're if you're living in one of the less affluent areas of Austin or outside of Austin, you're the people that most have to stand up because they are going to prey upon you and your traditional political weakness. You're traditionally politically weak if you live in less than affluent areas, and they're counting on that. They're counting that you won't say anything about it, that you won't rise up, that you won't go to county commissioners court meetings, that you won't go to city council meetings, and won't do anything about it.
Yes, but Steve,
what kind of helicopter do you think that was? Who
don't have a clue.
Sir, I have no idea, but I'll tell you this. Don't worry about that. The fact is we have the police chief on record of San Antonio. They shot up businesses, restaurants, and again, this is from the San Antonio Express News. They shot up businesses. $100,000 in property damages resulted from an explosion in New Orleans. In Miami, a bullet fired during a Delta Force raid went awry, ricocheting into a window of an all-night restaurant. I mean, these guys are running around in our cities firing automatic weapons. Police chiefs are taking all these weapons and all these free military helicopters and repainting them. This is, if they'll come under federal control, they'll put on the Nazi outfits, they get the money. If they,
Alex.
Yes.
Alex and Steve.
What's going on, Steve?
No, I'm saying hello to Alex and Steve.
Oh, hello.
This is Mark from Florida.
Hello, Mark.
Have been out of commission for a couple months. I want to thank you guys for what you're doing. I think you're proving that the camera is mightier than the sword.
Thank you.
Anyway,
and resistance is not futile. We're going to win this sucker.
Well, I'm heading for moving to Colorado in a few weeks. I'm going to explore Access TV up there and see if I can pick up momentum on what you guys are doing down here in Texas. Hopefully, if I get involved in that, we can get you and your group to come up to Colorado to speak publicly.
Well, what's easier is just to get our tapes.
Okay, well, I've already done that. I've got your tapes. I've already mailed up to Colorado to numerous people. I had a group from Florida come here last week, wanted to go out to dinner, and I said, no, you're going to stay here and watch Alex Jones' show tonight. I said, this is the whole purpose. I wanted you to stop by Austin.
Hey, do me a favor. There's only 3.5 minutes left. Stay on the line. I want to talk to you, and let's exchange some sort of contact point.
Let me tell you something. I've talked to this guy. He's a good guy. Good. Let me tell you something, Mark. Stay the course. Do what it takes to get on the air in Colorado. Do your own program. Put on other programs. The resistance must continue. They're shutting down access facilities all over the country. Most of talk radio and the internet is garbage, but there's few little glints of light out there. People are waking up.
Alex, when you did your DPS thumb scanning thing, if I remember right, the mullet rapper didn't publish anything. The Statesman didn't publish anything about that, correct?
Yes.
They didn't have anything in the newspaper? The Statesman didn't publish anything about
No, they didn't publish anything.
Okay, I called them the next day and asked them why they didn't put anything on something that was so newsworthy and so important for the people. Why didn't they have anything in there? And they said they didn't feel it was newsworthy. I said, this is probably the most newsworthy thing that's come along since the Alamo.
No. Somebody wanting to dress up as a woman and go down the street being harassed. That's important. One more point. And, Mark, I appreciate your call.
Okay.
Thanks for calling, Mark.
One point I got to make. Kevin Booth, who worked with different comedians and actors and people. He has his own record company and production company, Sacred Cow Productions, worked with Bill Hicks, does his label. I know the guy good. He's helped me out with some things. He goes, the sweetest, innocent guy and his girlfriend, Trey. They go out on Bull Creek with about 50 people are down there, swimming, having a good time with their dogs. He said it was the most zen moment, to use his, use his terminology. Suddenly, now they have park police come up and are harassing and laughing and telling people, put your dogs on leashes where they're all having a good time, do all this out in the middle of nowhere, out on Barton Creek. It was a Bull Creek. He's told about it today. And this guy never talks about politics. He doesn't, he's not into it. But he understood that. He's out there sun tanning with his girlfriend as the dogs play. And the kids are playing, and all these people out there. And what do? They come up and harass them. And then the cops went off and laughed, and we're going, those aren't real police. Those are the thugs that they're hiring. We need real police to stand up for the Constitution and stand up now.
And real quick, the Constitution, I want to be careful about this. Go get a copy and read it carefully. The Constitution does not give you rights, all right? Your Creator gives you rights, okay? A document doesn't give you rights. People don't give you rights. Your Creator does. The Constitution outlines the limits of federal and state government and local government in this country. Do not forget that. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Read it for yourself. Don't believe me. In the few moments that are left, you want to close, Alex?
Well, I had the, here it is. I had the article from the Express News. They talk about black helicopters.
Oh, real quick, too. Don't forget, if you've got information of your own, videotapes, news reports, Send them in.
Yeah,
send them to that address.
Send them to that address. We need it. We
Or
need
dial
you.
that comment
we
line.
need you to gather intelligence for us. You probably don't have time to write down the address. Write down that number. We can give you the address. We need intelligence gatherers. We need reporters. Keep video cameras on you on all times.
It is the best and most comprehensive book on Bohemian Grove, and it's written by Mike Hanson, my old camera guy.
Mike Hanson Archives.